And so let's say I want to create a scheduled prompt. I could take something very simple, very basic. I could be very complex. For folks that joined us for the workshop that we held, what was that, 2 weeks ago? No,
3 weeks.
3 weeks ago. We ran a workshop on how to reclaim time, and we covered something we call the on-point brief, right? And the on-point brief really is a framework to really get as much useful information as you can packed into a single prompt. So let's say that I want to schedule a recurring prompt, something maybe as simple as, what did I accomplish this week? Right. Well, that's a pretty general prompt, and if I go with that, who knows where Copilot's going to take it? And not only that, but it may point out things that really are not all that relevant, right? So instead of saying something that's simple, what I might say is using, what you can find in Outlook, Teams, chats and channels, documents that I've worked on, and I'll say objectives. We both know I set for the week. Let's say bullet out the accomplishments had this week. Or I'll just say bullet out what I've accomplished this week. And we also use the Planner app. So I'm going to actually mention that too. So documents I've worked on. So mining Planner app. Here's where Mel and Jean can look and say, gosh, Tony, you haven't really done much this week, have you?
Interested in your results.
Yeah. All right. So it's come back with a series of accomplishments. Now, I could refine, I could absolutely refine this. And I think I said, bullet it out, and it did, and so what I've done here is, in relation to what we call the on-point brief, I've laid out my goal. I've specifically called out particular sources, right? So I said Outlook, Teams, chats and channels, documents, Planner app, objectives that maybe I've had active conversations with Copilot about. Could I refine the context? Absolutely. Perhaps my real goal here is I need to generate revenue, so bubble those things to the top. So I could absolutely refine that prompt even further. Once I see all of my results, if I really like what I have here for my prompt, and this is specifically in Copilot, but again, this kind of capability does exist in other Gen AI products such as ChatGPT, and I haven't examined Claude, but I think you use it more than I do, Gene, don't you? I mean, do you know if Claude has a scheduling function?
It does. Yeah, I double check.
Yeah, and I think with ChatGPT, it like you can just prompt it and it will create that schedule kind of for you. But here within Copilot, it has a specific function, right? So once it has finished its result, I can come back up here to the original prompt, assuming that I like this prompt. When I hover over it, I can come in, I can edit, copy. Here you can see the little clock. This is where I can schedule this prompt. Now notice here, I also kind of time boxed this. I said set for the week, right? So here I might say I want to schedule this and I want to run this on a weekly basis, right? And I'm going to set it on Fridays and I'm going to have it, come in maybe towards the end of the day. Maybe I'll set that around 3 o'clock on a Friday. And I want to get an email summary when that's when it completes that prompt. I just noticed this morning. I thought this was really interesting. When we used to do scheduled prompts, it appeared that you could really only schedule out, I want to say it was a maximum of like 12 to 14 instances. So if you did it on a weekly basis, it would run for 12 to 14 weeks. If you did it on a daily basis, you're really only going to get it for like 2.5 weeks, right? But this was a recent change. It looks a lot more like, the way you might set up like a recurring meeting or calendar entry, right? So here I'm able to, set it, let's say I want to run it for the next 6 weeks. I'll go ahead and run this to the end of July as an example. And so every Friday at 3:00, it is going to rerun this prompt, give me the results, and it's going to send me an email. And now you can see that it's showing you here, it's creating it, and then I've got this additional scheduled prompt as well. So how do I go then, let's say, and look at my scheduled prompts? How do I go back and find them, right? Because it may be dropping in these weekly accomplishments into the same chat each time. Actually, I take that back. What you guys' experience has been, I think it actually creates a new one each time. Does that sound right to you?
It drops it to the end of the chat. So it's the same running chat for the entire time.
It should be in here then. Again, okay. Yeah. All right. So if I want to look at my scheduled prompts while I'm in the Copilot app, and if you're using Copilot actively, you can do this also from within Teams while you're in, while you have the Copilot app in context. Come up here to the ellipse, and then you'll see scheduled prompts. And then here you can see your scheduled prompts. I can come in here and edit them. I can just tell it run it right now. I can turn it off or just delete the scheduled prompt entirely. So especially considering that I noticed this change, that I could now run prompts longer than 14 instances, it then made me wonder, what other, was it here? Oh, here we go. So I kind of asked Copilot, what are the limits and parameters, right? What it came back with was interesting to me, sort of, I'll call it guidance that sounds a whole lot like what Mel and I call the on-point brief, right? You want to create a time window. You want to add that context, whether it's time, whether it's projects, whatever it is that you need it to focus on. The data scope, right? So in this case, we equate that to the sourcing. So a lot of this information really just kind of falls in line with what we tend to coach people on as well, which is be as specific as you can, right? You can spend an hour going back and forth with with your LLM trying to get the result that you want. But if you tend to think of your Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, whatever you're using, if you tend to think of it not just as like another way of Googling, but if you think of it in terms of this is my intern, right? They might be well qualified. They came from a very prestigious school. They've got access to lots of information. However, they don't know me, so they don't know how I want data presented to me. And also, if I'm not specific enough, it may provide information that is off the mark, right? So being more specific about what I want, how I want it presented to me, all of that is going to produce the result that you want faster. Another interesting thing that is also worth mentioning is that let's say I went back and forth, half a dozen times, trying to get the specific kind of result I wanted that I could then schedule. Well, okay, how do I schedule that when I had 5 or 6 prompts that got me to this point? Well, a nice feature that you can do is to simply, and this will work whether in any of the Gen AI products, you can just simply drop in a prompt and say, these are exactly the results I was looking for. Write me a prompt that will give me these exact results. And then once it drops that prompt out, open up a new chat, test it out, make sure it is giving you what you want, and then use that to schedule your prompts.
I think that using prompts like this, something that is really good to point out, it learns over time. So there is a memory feature. So after you are reiterating, like Tony was saying, maybe it wasn't quite right, you got to go back and forth with it a bit. It keep having that conversation, because the next time when you go to do it, you won't have to go back and forth so much. It will remember that. Now, that's only if you're using a paid version of the AI tool. There are obviously free versions of ChatGPT, all of the AI tools. Those do not have do not have the same memory capabilities. But the more you use your tool, and assuming it's paid for, the more you use your tool, the more it's going to zero in on exactly the way you like to work, the results you like to see, the language, the tone, that kind of thing. And it's going to get easier and easier. So if you look at Tony's, scheduled prompt that he had, that's just going to help him be more efficient over time. So he spends some time getting it narrowed in once, but now he doesn't have to do that week over week. He just has the information at his fingertips and he can get started with it. I have a scheduled prompt that runs every morning for me. And, sure, I can come in the morning, I'm drinking my tea, and I can, read my emails, check my calendar, figure out what I'm doing. But now I have a scheduled prompt that when I start my morning, it tells me exactly, you need to start focusing here, then here. Do not even look at these things. That's not important today. And it helps me be more efficient with my time.